What is the most embarrassing verse in the Bible? I do not mean the verses in the Gospel of Mark where we read, "A man asked Jesus, 'Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?' Jesus said to him, 'Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone.' Jesus clearly denies he is God. This is hugely embarrassing to Christians. Nor do I mean the verse in Ezekiel chapter 23, which reads, "She lusted after lovers with genitals as large as a donkey's and emissions like those of a horse." No, I don't mean either of those. Let me tell you what I do mean. When I was a committed Christian some time ago, I enjoyed reading the beautifully written books by C.S. Lewis. Now, I don't mean the Chronicles of Narnia, those classic novels for children, but his theological works. He has rightly been acclaimed as the greatest Christian apologist of the 20th century. My personal favourite is the famous Screwtape Letters, a satirical novel written as a series of letters from a senior demon, Screwtape, to his nephew, a junior tempter named Wormwood, so as to advise him on methods of securing the damnation of a British gent known only as the Patient. Arguably the most important work of 20th century Christian apologetics is Mere Christianity. I first read that when I was 16, in which C.S. Lewis tries to avoid denominational controversies in order to explain what he sees as the fundamental teachings of Christianity. In one significant respect, Lewis and I crossed paths, intellectually speaking. Since even before I committed my life to Christ, I had read the New Testament closely and discovered what Lewis termed the most embarrassing verse in the Bible. Here is his explanation of the problem, and he writes, "Say what you like, we shall be told. The apocalyptic beliefs of the first Christians have been proved to be false. It is clear from the New Testament that they all expected the second coming in their own lifetime. And worse still, they had a reason, and one which you will find very embarrassing. Their master had told them so. He shared and indeed created their delusion. He said in so many words, 'This generation shall not pass until all these things be done.' And he was wrong. He clearly knew no more about the end of the world than anyone else. It is clearly the most embarrassing verse in the Bible. That's C.S. Lewis in his book The World's Last End and Other Essays, page 97. Now, this embarrassing verse nearly stopped me from becoming a born-again Christian, but I put the issue to one side and converted to Christianity anyway. I was entranced by the idea that God loved me so much that he died for my sins, a mistaken notion I have since rejected. Let's look at the passage in more detail as it is found in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 13. Verse 30 is the problem text. Read it yourself in context and ask yourself what it means. So stop the video now and read the passage in the description below. "Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. That is, the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in Jerusalem and the coming of the Son of Man in great power and glory." In other words, the second coming. That's Mark chapter 13, verse 30, which I hope you've read. The Reverend Keith Ward, who is Professor of Divinity at Oxford University, calls verse 30 a mistake which is so central, so clear, and so glaring that it is very hard indeed to deny that it is there. That's from his Vision to Pursue, page 16. In a disarmingly autobiographical passage, he writes, "Various Christians have wriggled and squirmed to avoid this point. I have done it myself. But every wiggle and every squirm is strained, implausible, and in the end deceitful. What the sentence says is plain enough. It is only because we know it is false that we look for some other interpretation to save the appearance of truth. So it is suggested that this generation means this age between the birth of Jesus and the end of the world. So it could be as long as you like. After all, 1 Peter says 1,000 years is as one day to God. But if you can play with words like that, anything can be true. When Jesus says, "Surely I am coming soon," in Revelation 22:20, he means, surely I am coming in quite a long time, at least 2,000 years. If you can believe that, you can believe anything. Things can mean the opposite of what they say. End quote. I can personally confess to much wriggling and squirming on this issue, and it is a sort of comfort to realise that some of the best minds in Christendom, this professor at Oxford, have wriggled and squirmed too. The next person to comment on this verse is the distinguished New Testament scholar Professor James Dunn from Durham University. He says this on the verse: "It looks very much as though Jesus thought the end was imminent within the lifetime of his own generation." And then in brackets he puts Mark 9.1 and parallels 13:30, where this generation can only refer to the contemporaries of Jesus. That's from Unity and Diversity in the New Testament, an inquiry into the character of earliest Christianity by Jimmy Dunn, page 349. The famous British philosopher Bertrand Russell, in his book Why I Am Not a Christian, also argues, quote, "I am concerned with Christ as he appears in the gospel narrative. He certainly thought that his second coming would occur in clouds of glory before the death of all the people who were living at his time. There are a great many texts that prove he believed that his coming would happen during the lifetime of many then living. That was the belief of his earliest followers, and it was the basis of a good deal of his moral teaching." End quote. I like to search out New Testament commentaries by reputable scholars and look up the passage on Mark 13 to see what it says. If memory serves me right, I estimate that over 90% of the 30 plus commentaries I have read agree that there is a significant error in this passage. Not all scholars, however, attribute the mistake to Jesus, however. Some say the mistaken imminent eschatology has been attributed to Jesus by the early church, and that Jesus himself taught either an entirely futurist eschatology at a date unknown, or that the future age to come was completely realized in his ministry. Personally, I cannot countenance the possibility that a prophet of God could be in error about such a matter, and so on a priori theological grounds, the error must lie with the gospel writer and the early church, rather than Jesus. But the fact remains, as C.S. Lewis rightly said, it is the most embarrassing verse in the Bible. Till next time.